Have you ever wondered why some people work tirelessly their entire lives, yet still struggle financially until their final days? What invisible forces could possibly be holding back someone who puts in long hours, year after year, with seemingly nothing to show for it? This question haunts millions of hardworking individuals worldwide, and today, we're going to uncover the surprising truth behind this financial paradox. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up early, battle through traffic, work diligently all day, return home exhausted, collapse into bed, and repeat this exact routine the next morning. Weeks turn into months, months into years, and when you finally pause to check your bank account, there's almost nothing there. Despite all your dedication, despite all your sacrifice, financial freedom seems like a distant mirage that keeps receding as you approach it. You're not alone. This is the reality for countless hardworking individuals across the world. But here's what Florence Scovel Shinn discovered after decades of studying wealth patterns. Financial struggle isn't about bad luck or insufficient effort. It's about invisible habits that silently sabotage your future without you even realizing they exist. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you view money, success, and the seemingly innocent daily decisions that are actually keeping you trapped in a cycle of financial limitation. Think about this for a moment. Millions of people worldwide follow the same exhausting routine. The daily grind consumes their lives, yet this dedication rarely translates to financial security. Why is that? How can someone work so hard for so long and still have nothing to show for it financially? The answer isn't comfortable, but it's powerful. Destructive financial habits. These aren't dramatic mistakes like gambling fortunes away or making catastrophic investments. They're subtle, everyday patterns, things you might even consider normal or responsible behavior that gradually erode your financial potential over time. What I find most fascinating is that these habits aren't just about money. They're deeply psychological. They reflect how we think, what we believe is possible, and the invisible boundaries we've unconsciously accepted. Breaking free from financial limitation isn't just about earning more. It's about fundamentally changing how you interact with money on a daily basis. The 7 habits we're about to explore are so common, you probably won't even recognize some of them in yourself at first. You might even defend them as sensible or necessary. But as Florence Scovel Shinn warns, these seemingly innocent patterns are actually silent wealth killers that keep millions trapped in perpetual financial struggle. If you found value in these insights about wealth-destroying habits, consider subscribing to join our community of people committed to financial transformation. I share powerful strategies just like these to help you build true abundance. The most revealing truth about wealth is this. If you took someone with poor financial habits and suddenly gave them $1 million, they'd likely be broke again within 5 years. This isn't speculation. It's a pattern we see repeated with lottery winners, inheritance recipients, and athletes who receive massive contracts only to file for bankruptcy shortly after. But why? Because poor habits will always defeat good luck. No amount of windfall can overcome destructive daily decisions. Florence Scovel Shinn observed this phenomenon throughout her studies of wealth psychology. She discovered that money without proper habits is like water held in your hands. It inevitably slips through your fingers, regardless of how much you initially receive. This explains the shocking statistics showing that nearly 70% of lottery winners end up broke within 7 years. Their sudden transformation into millionaires didn't change the underlying mindset and behaviors that governed their relationship with money. Now, I want to go even deeper into the first of these wealth-destroying habits, what Florence Scovel Shinn called survival spending. This is perhaps the most common financial pattern keeping hard-working people trapped in perpetual struggle. You might recognize it as living paycheck to paycheck with a just get through this month mentality. Each payday brings temporary relief, But before the weekend's over, the money's already allocated. Rent, groceries, bills, perhaps a small dinner out, or that new phone you've been eyeing. And just like that, back to zero. The hidden impact of survival spending isn't just financial, it's psychological. When your entire focus becomes making it through the current month, your mind never has the space to contemplate building for the future. This short-term thinking creates a survival mentality that prevents the very possibility of growth or investment. You're not planting anything. You're consuming the seed that could grow into your financial freedom. Think about the revelations this brings to our understanding of wealth creation. Most financial advice focuses on earning more, but the uncomfortable truth is that many people earning six figures are just as trapped in survival spending as those making minimum wage. They've simply scaled up their lifestyle to match their income. Their expensive cars, designer clothes, and luxury vacations create the illusion of wealth, but their bank accounts tell a different story. The journey toward high financial independence begins with recognizing this destructive pattern in your own life. Behind the scenes of every purchase decision lies a critical choice. Are you eating the seed or planting it? Are you consuming your resources for immediate gratification or investing them for future growth? This mindset shift represents the fundamental difference between those who work their entire lives yet die broke and those who transform modest incomes into genuine wealth. What makes this particularly challenging is that our entire economic system is designed to encourage survival spending. Advertisements, easy credit, and social pressure constantly push us toward consuming rather than building. Breaking free requires a conscious decision to move against the current of what everyone around you considers normal. Do you recognize this pattern in your own life? Write, "I see the seed" in the comments if you've realized you've been consuming your financial potential rather than planting it for growth. This awareness is where real transformation begins. Let me share a powerful metaphor that Florence Scovel Shinn often used when counseling people trapped in financial struggle. Imagine a farmer who receives a bag of seeds after a long winter of scarcity. Desperate and hungry, he cooks and eats all the seeds immediately, satisfying his current hunger. But when planting season arrives, he has nothing left to put in the ground. His immediate need was met, but his future harvest was sacrificed. This is precisely what happens when you spend everything you earn on immediate needs and wants. You're literally eating the seed that could have grown into your financial freedom. Every dollar that passes through your hands isn't just currency, it's potential. It could remain a dollar, satisfying an immediate desire, or it could be planted, watered, and cultivated into something far more valuable over time. But this transformation can only happen if you resist the urge to consume it all now. Florence Scovel Shinn's wisdom on this topic wasn't just theoretical. It came from her own painful journey. She openly shared her experience of standing outside offices, desperate for work, facing rejection after rejection. The revelation came when she finally secured steady employment. Like most people, she assumed her financial situation would naturally improve with a regular paycheck. Instead, she discovered an insidious pattern that keeps millions trapped in financial mediocrity. As her income gradually increased, her expenses expanded at exactly the same rate, sometimes even faster. A slightly better apartment, more expensive clothes, dining out more frequently. Each seemingly reasonable upgrade consumed any additional income before it could be directed toward building actual wealth. The profound insight behind this experience is that financial freedom isn't primarily about how much you earn. It's about the gap between what you earn and what you spend. This phenomenon represents one of the most widespread illusions in modern life. People work harder, pursue promotions, change companies for better salaries, all while remaining on what Scovel Shinn called the financial treadmill. They run faster and faster, increasing their income year after year, yet remain in exactly the same place financially. Their lifestyle simply expands to consume whatever additional resources become available. The hidden truth behind this pattern is that it creates the appearance of progress without the reality. New cars, bigger homes, and exotic vacations provide the external symbols of success. But beneath this facade lies the same fundamental financial insecurity, often just one or two missed paychecks away from serious trouble. This is why studies consistently show that even many high-income professionals experience significant financial stress and retire with inadequate savings. Breaking free from this cycle requires a profound mindset shift. 8. Decision to maintain a deliberate gap between your income and expenses, regardless of how much you earn. This space becomes the soil where your financial seeds can be planted and nurtured. Without it, no amount of income can create lasting abundance. Have you noticed this treadmill effect in your own financial journey? Comment "Breaking the Cycle" if you're ready to create that crucial gap between your income and expenses where real wealth can begin growing. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates how these daily financial decisions transform our lives over time. Florence Scovel Shinn often described two young men who worked in the same factory, earning identical salaries. From the outside, their circumstances appeared completely equal. Same education, similar backgrounds, equivalent opportunities. But beneath this surface similarity lay a profound difference in how they approached each day after work. The first man would come home exhausted, collapse on the couch, scroll through social media, watch television, and spend whatever disposable income he had on immediate pleasures, new clothes, eating out, the latest gadgets. His focus remained squarely on recovering from today and surviving until tomorrow. This pattern seemed entirely reasonable. After all, he worked hard and deserved some relaxation and reward. This journey of breaking free from limiting financial habits is one we can take together. Hit subscribe to access more content designed to help you replace poverty thinking with prosperity habits. The second man experienced the same fatigue after his shift, but he made a different choice. Despite his exhaustion, he dedicated just 1 hour each evening to learning a new skill: accounting, marketing, business operations. Instead of upgrading his wardrobe each month, he directed a small portion of his income into savings and modest investments. These differences seemed almost insignificant in the moment, just small daily choices that anyone might make differently. Yet the revelation comes when we fast forward 10 years. The first man remains in essentially the same position, perhaps with minor promotions, but still exchanging his time for a paycheck that barely covers his needs. The second man now owns his own business, having leveraged his accumulated knowledge and capital to create something that generates wealth even when he isn't physically present. The extraordinary insight here isn't about intelligence or luck. It's about how seemingly minor habits create dramatically different destinies. This illustrates a fundamental principle in wealth psychology that most people never grasp. The world financially rewards builders, not survivors. When your mindset centers entirely around making it through the current day, week, or month, you remain trapped in a perpetual cycle of trading time for money. Building requires a completely different orientation, one that diverts some energy from immediate concerns toward creating systems, assets, or skills that will produce returns long into the future. The hidden impact of survival thinking extends far beyond your bank account. It reshapes your entire relationship with time and possibility. When immediate needs consume all your mental bandwidth, long-term planning becomes impossible. The very thought patterns needed for wealth creation, strategic thinking, delayed gratification, compound growth, remain undeveloped. Your financial muscles atrophy while your consumption muscles strengthen with daily use. This survival orientation isn't limited to those in financial difficulty. Many high-income professionals exist in exactly the same mindset, just with more expensive survival needs. Their larger homes, luxury cars, and exclusive vacations create the appearance of wealth while actually reinforcing the same fundamental pattern, consuming resources rather than deploying them strategically to build lasting abundance. The journey from survival to building begins with a conscious shift in how you view each dollar that passes through your hands. Is it merely a means to get through today, Or could it be a building block in creating your future? If you're recognizing this survival thinking pattern in your own life, type "building my future" in the comments below as your commitment to this essential mindset shift. Now I want to explore the second wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified in her research. Something, perhaps, even more insidious than survival spending. She called it the illusion of prosperity, what we might today recognize as consumerism. This habit emerges from a peculiar psychological paradox. Those who feel the most financially insecure often become the most driven to display external symbols of wealth. Behind the scenes of this behavior lies a profound revelation about human psychology. When we experience scarcity or financial stress, we develop a powerful emotional need to escape those feelings, even temporarily. This creates a dangerous pattern where people spend what little resources they have on items that make them appear successful rather than on investments that would actually create success. The luxury handbag purchased on credit, the expensive car that drains savings, the designer clothes bought instead of investing in education, all represent the prioritization of looking wealthy over becoming wealthy. Florence Scovel Shinn observed this pattern repeating throughout history across all socioeconomic levels. She noted how people living paycheck to paycheck would suddenly receive a bonus or tax refund and immediately convert it into a visible status symbol rather than using it as capital for growth. This momentary emotional relief, the temporary pride of ownership, the fleeting admiration of others, creates a powerful but short-lived dopamine reward that reinforces the very behavior keeping them trapped. The transformation begins when you recognize this pattern in your own life. Every purchase decision represents a crossroads, a choice between consuming a resource for immediate gratification or investing it for future growth. This isn't about never enjoying life or perpetual sacrifice. It's about understanding the true impact of your choices and making them consciously rather than reactively. Remember the seed metaphor we discussed earlier? Florence Scovel Shinn expanded this concept with a powerful visual. If you eat your seeds instead of planting them, you'll experience momentary satisfaction followed by perpetual hunger. But if you plant those seeds, water them consistently, protect them from storms, and give them time to grow, eventually you'll sit in the shade of a mighty tree that produces more fruit and seeds than you could ever consume alone. The hidden truth here is that delayed gratification isn't actually sacrifice, it's strategic patience. Those who appear to be giving up pleasures in the present aren't denying themselves. They're exchanging immediate, smaller pleasures for delayed, much larger ones. The millionaire who drives a modest car and lives below their means isn't depriving themselves. They're expressing the very mindset that created their wealth in the first place. This journey from consuming to building requires a fundamental shift in how we process the emotions connected to money. Instead of using purchases as emotional band-aids, buying things to feel successful, worthy, or to relieve stress, we must develop healthier ways to meet these psychological needs. True prosperity begins when we stop trying to look rich and start implementing the actual behaviors that create wealth. If you've caught yourself buying things to feel temporarily better about your financial situation, type "planting instead of eating" in the comments. This awareness marks the beginning of a profound shift in your relationship with consumption. What makes consumerism particularly dangerous is that it isn't something that happens by accident. Florence Scovel Shinn discovered a profound and unsettling truth about modern economies. The money traps we fall into are deliberately engineered to separate us from our earnings. These sophisticated mechanisms operate through carefully crafted advertisements, strategic sales promotions, and even the apps on our phones, all designed with one purpose: to capture our resources before we can deploy them for growth. The architecture of these traps reveals something remarkable about human psychology. Most people respond almost automatically when they receive unexpected money, a bonus, tax refund, or small windfall. Rather than directing these resources toward investments, debt reduction, or emergency funds, they immediately convert this capital into a consumer purchase, often something they didn't even want until they had the extra money. The shopping apps, one-click purchasing, and buy now, pay later systems aren't conveniences, they're psychological triggers designed to bypass our rational decision-making processes. Florence Scovel Shinn observed a striking contrast that reveals everything about the relationship between appearance and reality in wealth building. Poor people want to look rich, while rich people want to stay rich. This insight illuminates the fundamental difference in orientation that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who remain perpetually struggling. Consider Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest individuals on the planet, who still lives in the same modest house he purchased in Omaha, Nebraska, decades ago for $31,500. His lifestyle choices aren't driven by deprivation. They reflect a fundamental understanding of what actually constitutes wealth versus what merely signals it. Meanwhile, someone earning $500 monthly will happily take out a high-interest loan to purchase a $1,000 smartphone, sacrificing their financial future for the temporary status of owning a premium device. The revelation here isn't about judging these choices, but understanding the mindset that creates them. Behind every purchase lies a story we tell ourselves about what that purchase means, about our identity, our status, our worth in the eyes of others. The person financing an expensive phone beyond their means isn't simply making a poor financial decision. They're attempting to fulfill deeper emotional needs through consumption, rather than finding healthier ways to meet those same needs. This pattern creates an almost invisible barrier to wealth building. Each individual purchase may seem reasonable, even necessary, in the moment. But collectively, these decisions form chains that bind people to perpetual financial struggle. The tragedy is that most people never connect their daily consumption habits to their long-term financial outcomes. They see these as separate domains rather than intimately connected aspects of the same system. The journey toward financial freedom begins with developing awareness of these deliberately designed traps and the psychological vulnerabilities they exploit. By recognizing these patterns in your own life, you gain the power to make conscious choices rather than reactive ones. If you've noticed yourself falling into these consumer traps designed to separate you from your money, comment "Seeing the traps" below. Awareness is always the first step toward freedom. Let me share a story that Florence Scovel Shinn often used to illustrate how deeply these consumer traps can impact our lives. She spoke of a man who had worked diligently for years and finally received a significant promotion and salary increase. This should have been the turning point in his financial journey, the moment when he could begin building real wealth with his additional income. Instead, the very day he received news of his raise, he walked straight to the bank, took out a substantial loan, and purchased a luxury car that he'd been eyeing for months. The revelation came 6 months later. What initially felt like freedom, the pride of pulling up to work in a prestigious vehicle, the admiration from colleagues, the sense of having made it, quickly transformed into a financial prison. Each month, nearly half his increased salary went directly to the bank for car payments. The vehicle that was meant to display his success had actually created a heavy burden, making the bank wealthy while keeping him financially strained despite his higher income. This pattern reveals the profound difference between symbols and substance in wealth building. The car wasn't simply a poor financial decision. It represented a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of wealth itself. The man confused looking rich with being rich, not recognizing that these are often directly opposing states. The resources directed toward maintaining the appearance of prosperity were precisely what prevented him from developing actual financial security. The hidden psychological mechanism at work here is something Florence Scovel Shinn called premature affluence, the desire to display the trappings of wealth before establishing the foundation. This mindset creates a particularly dangerous cycle. The more financially insecure someone feels internally, the more driven they become to project an image of success externally. Each status purchase temporarily soothes the anxiety about their actual financial situation, while simultaneously making that situation worse. Behind the scenes of this behavior lies a profound misinterpretation of what wealth actually means. True wealth isn't about displaying expensive possessions. It's about having options, flexibility, and freedom from financial stress. It's about owning your time rather than trading it away to maintain appearances. The luxury car, designer clothes, and premium accessories that signal status to others often represent invisible chains to the people who purchase them. This transformation in understanding wealth requires a complete reorientation in how we measure success. Most people judge financial achievement by what they can buy: the house, the car, the vacations. But those who actually build lasting prosperity judge it by what they don't need to sell. Specifically, their time, freedom, and peace of mind. The journey from appearing successful to being successful means developing comfort with the gap between what you can afford and what you choose to spend. The extraordinary revelation is that many genuinely wealthy individuals avoid most status purchases entirely. Their decisions aren't driven by deprivation, but by a crystal-clear understanding that real wealth is measured by the growing gap between income and expenses, not by the visible symbols acquired. If you've recognized yourself falling into the trap of purchasing status over security, type "substance over symbols" in the comments as your commitment to this essential perspective shift. Now I want to explore the third wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified in her research. One that might surprise you because it often masquerades as wisdom or prudence. This habit is the paralyzing fear of risk. Most people trapped in financial mediocrity share a common belief: playing it safe is the responsible choice. They avoid starting businesses, making investments, or pursuing unconventional opportunities out of fear that something might go wrong. The paradox that Scovel Shinn discovered is truly eye-opening. What most people consider safe is actually the riskiest path of all. Consider someone who dutifully places their savings in a traditional bank account, earning 1 to 2% interest, while inflation silently erodes its value at 3 to 5% annually. They believe they're being financially responsible, protecting their money from loss, when in reality, they're guaranteeing its gradual disappearance. Their money is like ice slowly melting away while they congratulate themselves for keeping it safe in the freezer. This revelation completely transforms how we should evaluate financial decisions. The mindset shift required is understanding that there are different types of risk: visible risks that everyone recognizes, and invisible risks that most people never consider. Starting a business has visible risks that trigger our fear response. You might fail, lose money, face rejection. But the invisible risk of remaining in a job for 40 years, allowing inflation to erode your purchasing power, missing opportunities for growth, and building someone else's dream instead of your own, is actually far more devastating in the long run. Consider Jeff Bezos, who left his secure, well-paying job on Wall Street to start Amazon from his garage. Everyone around him thought he was taking an enormous risk, walking away from stability to pursue what seemed like a fantasy. Friends, family, and colleagues called him crazy, warning him about the high failure rate of new businesses. But Bezos understood something profound about the nature of risk, something Florence Scovel Shinn had been teaching for years. The greatest risk in life isn't failing, it's never trying. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough is someone who is willing to embrace calculated uncertainty. This doesn't mean blind gambling or reckless speculation. It means thoughtful evaluation of opportunities that others are too frightened to pursue. What appears risky to the average person, entrepreneurship, investments, innovation, is often less risky than what seems safe: dependency on a single income source, avoiding financial education, keeping all money in cash. The journey toward financial independence requires developing a more sophisticated understanding of risk, one that accounts for both the dangers of action and the perhaps greater dangers of inaction. The tragedy is that most people's fear of loss keeps them from ever experiencing significant gain. They cling so tightly to what they have that they never create the space to receive something better. This fear isn't just about money, it's about identity and self-worth. Taking financial risks requires believing that you have the capacity to handle potential setbacks, learn from mistakes, and ultimately succeed. Many people avoid these challenges not because they fear losing money, but because they fear confirming their deepest insecurities about themselves. If you've recognized this fear of risk holding you back, type calculated courage in the comments as your commitment to developing a more balanced relationship with financial uncertainty. The most devastating aspect of this fear-based approach to finances is what Florence Scovel Shinn called the paralysis of potential. When fear becomes your primary financial advisor, it invariably offers the same guidance in every situation. Wait, avoid, delay. This creates a perpetual state of suspended animation where opportunities appear and disappear while you remain frozen in indecision, waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive. This paralysis doesn't just cost you individual opportunities, it guarantees financial mediocrity by preventing the very actions necessary for exceptional growth. Think about the most successful people you know or admire. Their paths weren't characterized by avoiding risk, but by taking calculated, intelligent risks that others were unwilling to consider. They didn't eliminate uncertainty from their journey. They developed the capacity to move forward despite it. This revelation completely transforms our understanding of financial psychology. Wealth creation isn't about eliminating risk, but about developing the courage and capacity to navigate it. Albert Einstein, whose brilliance extended far beyond physics, recognized a phenomenon so powerful he allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world: compound interest. This mathematical miracle creates exponential rather than linear growth, transforming modest investments into substantial wealth through the simple passage of time. A single dollar invested at 10% annual growth becomes $1.10 after 1 year. Hardly impressive. But after 30 years, that same dollar becomes $17.45, and after 50 years, it grows to $117.39, all without any additional contribution. The hidden truth here is that time is your most valuable financial asset, far more important than the initial amount invested. Someone who invests $5,000 at age 25 will likely accumulate more wealth than someone who invests $25,000 at age 45, even though the second person contributed 5 times more capital. This mathematical reality creates an uncomfortable revelation. Waiting for the perfect time to begin investing is actually the perfect strategy for ensuring you never reach financial independence. Behind the scenes of this hesitation lies a profound psychological barrier, what Scovel Shinn called the perfectionist's trap. Many people avoid investing because they're waiting for the perfect investment, the perfect economic conditions, or until they've learned enough about markets. Others delay starting businesses until they have the perfect idea, the perfect amount of capital, or the perfect skills. These seeming acts of prudence are actually sophisticated forms of self-sabotage, ways of avoiding the discomfort of action while maintaining the illusion of future progress. The transformation begins when you recognize that imperfect action today will always outperform perfect action tomorrow. Every day spent waiting for ideal conditions is a day forever lost to compound growth. The journey toward financial freedom doesn't require extraordinary knowledge, perfect timing, or absence of mistakes. It simply requires beginning. If you're recognizing how fear of imperfect conditions has kept you from starting your financial growth journey, type "starting today" in the comments as your commitment to taking that first crucial step, however imperfect it might be. Now I want to illuminate the fourth wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified, one that's so subtle most people don't even recognize it as a problem. This habit is procrastination, the seemingly innocent decision to delay financial action until some future moment. You've likely heard these thoughts in your own mind. I'll start investing next year when I have more money. I'll learn about business after things settle down at work. I'll build my side hustle once the kids are older. The tragedy is that for most people, one day becomes never without them ever noticing the transition. What makes this habit particularly dangerous is that it disguises itself as reasonable planning rather than what it truly is, a silent wealth killer. Each postponed financial decision isn't just delayed, it's diminished in its potential impact. This is because procrastination robs you of your most valuable and irreplaceable resource, time. Money can be earned, lost, and earned again. Knowledge can be acquired at almost any age, but time, once passed, is gone forever, and with it, the extraordinary power of compound growth that Einstein so revered. Florence Scovel Shinn was remarkably transparent about her own struggles with this pattern. In her earlier years, she consistently postponed financial action, telling herself, "When I have more money, I'll invest. When I have more time, I'll learn about business. When conditions improve, I'll take that risk." She later realized that this seemingly prudent approach was actually costing her years of potential growth. The perfect moment she was waiting for never materialized, because perfect moments are created, not discovered. The revelation that transformed Scovel Shinn's approach came when she recognized that success doesn't come to those who wait for ideal conditions. It comes to those who start where they are, with what they have, creating momentum that eventually overcomes whatever limitations initially seemed insurmountable. This insight completely reframes how we should approach financial growth. Imperfect action today will always outperform perfect action tomorrow. Behind the scenes of procrastination lies a complex psychological mechanism, what some call the comfort zone illusion. Our minds are remarkably skilled at creating logical-sounding reasons to avoid the discomfort of change. We convince ourselves that delaying action is about preparation or prudence when it's actually about avoiding uncertainty and potential failure. This self-deception creates an imaginary future where we'll somehow have more courage, discipline, and clarity than we do today. A fantasy that prevents us from developing these qualities through actual practice. The journey toward financial independence requires recognizing that the conditions will never feel perfect for taking that first step. There will always be reasons to wait, to delay, to postpone. The transformation begins when you make the conscious decision to act despite these reasons, to start building your financial future with whatever resources you currently have, however limited they might seem. This doesn't mean making reckless decisions or acting without thought. It means acknowledging that the learning process itself requires action, not just contemplation. If you've been postponing important financial decisions in your own life, type "breaking the delay cycle" in the comments as your commitment to taking at least one concrete financial action this week, however small it might seem. The insidious aspect of procrastination that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered in her research is its ability to create what she called the illusion of potential, a comforting belief that someday things will be different. This false narrative provides a temporary emotional relief that makes chronic delay feel like a reasonable strategy rather than a destructive habit. I could start. Investing if I wanted to feels almost as satisfying as actually investing, without requiring any of the discomfort or uncertainty that real action entails. This psychological mechanism creates a dangerous pattern where contemplating future action substitutes for present activity. Many people spend years thinking about businesses they might start, investments they might make, or skills they might develop, all while taking no concrete steps toward these possibilities. The mental rehearsal creates a false sense of progress that temporarily soothes the anxiety of inaction. Meanwhile, the precious resource of time, the essential ingredient in wealth building, continues slipping away. The hidden revelation here is that procrastination doesn't just delay your financial future. It fundamentally alters what that future can become. Compound growth, the mathematical miracle that turns modest investments into substantial wealth, requires one ingredient above all others: time. When you postpone beginning your investment journey by just 5 years, you don't lose just 5 years of growth. You lose the exponential expansion that would have occurred during the most powerful period of the compounding curve. This creates a dramatic divergence between potential paths that grows wider with each passing year. Florence Scovel. Shinn emphasized a truth that completely transforms our understanding of financial success. Wealth creation rarely results from dramatic single decisions, but from consistent small actions maintained over time. The difference between those who achieve financial independence and those who remain trapped in struggle often comes down to when they begin, today, versus some perpetually postponed tomorrow. This insight shifts our focus from waiting for the big break to implementing immediate, manageable steps that create momentum. The journey toward financial freedom requires recognizing what Shinn called the tyranny of tomorrow, the persistent belief that future conditions will somehow be more conducive to action than present ones. Behind this belief lies a fundamental misunderstanding about how transformation actually occurs. We imagine that motivation precedes action, that we'll feel ready and confident before beginning. But the psychological reality is precisely the opposite. Action creates motivation. Clarity emerges through doing, and confidence develops as a result of experience, not as a prerequisite for it. This perspective completely reframes how we should approach financial growth. Instead of waiting until you feel ready to make major changes, start with whatever small step is available to you today, even if it seems insignificant. Open that investment account with a minimal deposit. Spend 30 minutes learning about a business concept. Have a conversation about potential collaboration. These seemingly minor actions create ripples of change that eventually transform into waves of progress. If you've been waiting for the right time to begin your financial journey, type "starting small today" in the comments as your commitment to taking one immediate action, however modest it might seem. Remember that the distance between where you are and where you want to be begins with a single step taken now, not tomorrow. Now I want to explore the fifth wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified, one that operates almost invisibly yet exerts tremendous influence over your financial destiny. This habit is surrounding yourself with the wrong environment, particularly the wrong people. Scovel Shinn discovered a profound truth that has since been confirmed by countless studies in psychology and sociology. You inevitably become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This revelation transforms our understanding of financial outcomes. If your 5 closest associates primarily gossip, complain, waste time, and focus on consumption rather than creation, you'll likely develop these same patterns, not through conscious choice, but through the subtle power of social influence. Conversely, if your inner circle regularly discusses ideas, investments, opportunities, and growth, you'll naturally absorb these mindsets and behaviors. Your environment shapes you so gradually that you rarely notice the transformation until it's complete. Florence Scovel. Shinn distilled this concept into a powerful aphorism: "Show me your friends, and I will show you your future." This isn't merely poetic. It's a predictive formula that operates with remarkable consistency across all socioeconomic levels. The people surrounding you create a mental and emotional atmosphere that either elevates or diminishes your potential through a process of continuous, unconscious calibration. You begin to adopt their vocabulary, their reactions to challenges, their beliefs about money, and their expectations about what's possible. The hidden truth that most people miss is that environment isn't just your physical surroundings. It's the invisible thought patterns and emotional currents that flow through your daily interactions. This mental ecosystem literally programs your subconscious, establishing default patterns that guide thousands of small decisions about money, effort, risk, and opportunity. These decisions, accumulated over years, ultimately determine your financial trajectory. Scovel Shinn observed this principle operating in the lives of 2 groups of young people from similar backgrounds. One group spent their evenings engaged in activities that provided immediate gratification: drinking, passive entertainment, complaining about circumstances. The other invested those same hours building small businesses, teaching each other new skills, discussing books and ideas. After a decade, the first group remained essentially unchanged, while the second had transformed their circumstances completely. Same starting point, different environments, dramatically different destinations. The journey toward financial independence often requires making difficult decisions about who you allow into your inner circle. This isn't about rejecting people. It's about consciously curating the influences that shape your thinking during your most formative periods of growth. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to create distance from relationships that reinforce limiting beliefs about money and possibility. The transformation begins with an honest assessment of how your current environment affects your financial psychology. Do the people around you expand your sense of what's possible or contract it? Do they encourage bold action or caution against it? Do they focus on problems or solutions? These environmental factors shape your financial destiny more powerfully than most individual decisions. If you're recognizing how your environment might be limiting your financial potential, type "choosing growth relationships" in the comments. This awareness marks the beginning of consciously selecting the influences that will shape your financial future rather than passively absorbing whatever happens to surround you. What makes this environmental influence so powerful is what happens behind the scenes in our daily interactions. Florence Scovel Shinn documented this through a compelling real-world experiment she observed over a decade. She followed two groups of young men who started with remarkably similar backgrounds, education levels, and financial circumstances. The only significant difference was how they chose to spend their evenings after work. The first group established a routine centered around immediate gratification, gathering to drink, party, watch television, and engage in what they considered deserved relaxation after long work days. Their conversations typically revolved around complaints about bosses, economic conditions, and the unfairness of the system. When money was discussed, it was usually about consumption, new purchases, weekend plans, or desired possessions. The second group created an entirely different evening ritual. They met regularly to discuss business ideas, teach each other new skills, review books they'd read, and even pool small amounts of money for joint investments. Their conversations centered around possibilities, strategies, and mutual support for individual goals. While they occasionally socialized in traditional ways, their primary focus remained growth and development. The revelation came when Scovel Shinn reconnected with both groups 10 years later. The transformation was stark and undeniable. The first group remained essentially unchanged. Most worked at the same companies in similar positions, complained about the same problems, and continued living paycheck to paycheck despite modest income increases. The second group had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Several owned successful businesses, others had advanced to leadership positions, and nearly all had developed significant financial assets. This wasn't coincidence or luck. It was the direct result of their environmental choices. Day by day, conversation by conversation, these environments shaped their beliefs, expectations, vocabulary, and decision-making patterns. The journey toward financial independence often begins not with dramatic changes in income or knowledge, but with a deliberate transformation of who you surround yourself with. Your environment operates as an invisible force field that either pulls you down or lifts you up. Every interaction either reinforces limiting beliefs or expands your sense of what's possible. The uncomfortable truth is that your financial trajectory is unlikely to diverge significantly from those you spend the most time with. This doesn't mean rejecting family or long-term friends. It means strategically expanding your circle to include growth-oriented relationships that challenge your limitations. Financial breakthrough frequently begins with environmental transformation. This might mean joining investment groups, entrepreneurial communities, or mastermind circles where prosperity thinking is the norm rather than the exception. It might mean seeking mentors who have already achieved what you aspire to create. Or it could simply mean carefully curating your media consumption to include voices that expand possibility rather than reinforce limitation. if you've recognized how your current environment might be shaping your financial reality, type "upgrading my circle" in the comments. Your environment is either a launching pad or an anchor. Which one is yours currently serving as? Now I want to uncover the sixth wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified as perhaps the most subtle yet powerful barrier to financial freedom. This habit is the tendency to blame external circumstances for your financial situation. When faced with financial challenges, most people instinctively point fingers outward, at the government, their employers, the economy, their upbringing, or even their family circumstances. If only taxes were lower. If only my boss recognized my value. If only I had been born into a wealthier family. If only the economy were better. What Scovel Shinn discovered about this pattern is truly eye-opening. When life becomes difficult, blaming external factors provides immediate emotional relief, a temporary escape from the discomfort of responsibility. It soothes our ego to believe that forces beyond our control are responsible for our struggles. After all, if our financial situation isn't our fault, we don't need to face the discomfort of changing deeply ingrained patterns or confronting our fears. The revelation here is profound. This momentary comfort comes at an extraordinary price: your personal power. Every time you attribute your circumstances to external factors, you unconsciously reinforce the belief that you are a victim of forces beyond your influence. This victim mentality creates an invisible prison where your financial future remains forever dependent on factors you believe you cannot change. The psychological impact runs deep. As long as you believe your situation is someone else's fault, you'll never take the actions necessary to transform it. Behind the scenes of this blaming habit lies what Florence Scovel Shinn called the responsibility paradox. When we avoid responsibility for our current circumstances, we simultaneously forfeit our authority to change them. This creates a peculiar dynamic where people feel simultaneously angry about their financial situation, yet powerless to improve it. They demand that the world change to accommodate their needs rather than developing the capacity to thrive regardless of external conditions. The journey toward financial independence requires a complete inversion of this pattern, moving from external attribution to internal empowerment. This doesn't mean denying real systemic challenges or pretending that everyone starts from equal footing. It means recognizing that regardless of starting point or external circumstances, your financial future will be determined primarily by how you respond to these conditions rather than by the conditions themselves. This perspective shift transforms your relationship with adversity itself. Challenges are no longer merely obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to develop precisely the qualities necessary for financial independence: resilience, creativity, and strategic thinking. Some of history's greatest fortunes have been built during economic depressions and recessions, not because these conditions were favorable, but because someone chose to focus on response rather than blame. If you've noticed yourself falling into patterns of blaming external factors for your financial situation, type "taking full responsibility" in the comments. This acknowledgement represents the first step toward reclaiming your financial power, recognizing that while you may not control all circumstances, you always control your response to them. Florence Scovel Shinn often shared a powerful encounter that perfectly illustrates how deeply this blame pattern can affect our lives. She once met a young man who was bitterly complaining about his financial struggles, specifically blaming his father for not leaving him an inheritance. "If only my father had left me money like other parents do for their children, I wouldn't be in this position," he lamented. Scovel Shinn's response transformed not only his perspective, but his entire financial trajectory. She looked him directly in the eyes and said, "That's precisely why you have to succeed, so that your children never say the same thing about you." This profound insight illuminates a critical crossroads that every generation faces. We can either pass down excuses or pass down opportunities. Poor people, not just financially, but in mindset, consistently pass down elaborate justifications for why success was impossible. Wealthy people, Again, in mindset more than just money, pass down strategies, values, and opportunities that enable the next generation to build upon their foundation. This revelation completely reframes how we should view our current circumstances, regardless of their challenges. Your starting point, whether advantaged or disadvantaged, is now fixed in history. The only relevant question is what you will do with it, what you will create from it, and consequently, what you will pass on to those who follow you. Will your legacy be a sophisticated list of reasons why success was impossible, or will it be the blueprint for how you overcame those very obstacles? The hidden psychological mechanism at work in the blame game is what Florence Scovel Shinn called the dependency trap. When we attribute our financial situation to external factors beyond our control, we unconsciously create a mental model where our improvement depends on those same external factors changing first. This creates a form of psychological dependency that keeps us perpetually waiting for outside conditions to improve rather than developing the internal resources to thrive regardless of circumstances. Behind the scenes of this pattern lies a profound misunderstanding about the nature of power itself. Most people conceptualize power as freedom from challenges, the ability to avoid obstacles. But true power isn't the absence of obstacles. It's the capacity to overcome them. Financial freedom doesn't come from having a perfect starting point or ideal external conditions. It comes from developing the resilience, creativity, and strategic thinking that enable you to navigate whatever circumstances you encounter. The transformation begins with a conscious decision to stop using the word because when explaining your financial situation. I'm struggling because the economy is bad. I can't get ahead because my boss doesn't appreciate me. I don't have savings because my expenses are too high. Each of these statements reinforces the belief that your circumstances control you rather than you controlling your response to circumstances. The journey toward financial independence requires inverting this formula, taking complete ownership of both your current reality and your future possibilities. If you've recognized this blame pattern operating in your own financial story, type "breaking the chain" in the comments. This acknowledgement represents your decision to end the generational cycle of excuses and begin creating a legacy of opportunity instead. Florence Scovel Shinn often illustrated her principles through powerful stories that revealed deeper truths about financial psychology. One of her most illuminating examples was the tale of two shopkeepers who operated stores on the same quiet street with minimal foot traffic. Both faced identical external circumstances, a challenge that threatened their very livelihood. The first shopkeeper fell into a pattern of constant complaint. He blamed the city council for not directing more traffic to their street. He criticized the local government for favoring other business districts. He lamented how the economy had turned against small business owners. Day after day, he sat in his empty store, growing increasingly bitter while waiting for external conditions to improve. His energy was entirely consumed by identifying all the forces conspiring against his success. The second shopkeeper looked at the exact same circumstances and asked himself a different question. If customers won't come to me, how can I go to them? This simple shift from blame to responsibility sparked a creative solution. He began offering free delivery to nearby homes and offices. He created a simple catalog of his products and distributed it throughout the neighborhood. He built relationships with other businesses, creating mutually beneficial referral arrangements. He focused all his energy not on what he couldn't control, but on what he could. The revelation came 5 years later. The first shopkeeper's business had closed, unable to survive what he viewed as impossible market conditions. The second had not only thrived, but had expanded to multiple locations, eventually growing into a regional supermarket chain. Same street, same starting conditions, dramatically different outcomes, all determined by the fundamental choice between blame and responsibility. This story perfectly illustrates the transformative power of ownership. The circumstances themselves held no inherent meaning or limitation. They were simply conditions to be navigated. What determined the outcome wasn't the challenge, but the response to it. This insight completely reframes how we should approach financial obstacles, seeing them not as barriers that prevent progress, but as opportunities to develop precisely the qualities that create long-term success. Now, want to explore the seventh and final wealth-destroying habit that Florence Scovel Shinn identified, one that often accompanies blaming, complaining without action. This habit manifests as a peculiar substitute for actual change. People complain endlessly about their job without learning new skills, about their pay without starting a side hustle, about the economy without adjusting their financial strategy. The psychology behind this pattern is fascinating. Complaining creates the illusion of addressing problems without requiring the discomfort of actually solving them. What makes this habit particularly dangerous is its deceptive nature. Complaining about a situation feels like you're doing something about it. It provides temporary emotional relief, creating the sensation of progress without the reality of it. Meanwhile, it consumes the very energy and focus that could be directed toward constructive change. Every minute spent complaining is a minute not spent developing solutions, learning new skills, or implementing different approaches. If you've caught yourself in these cycles of complaint without corresponding action, type "from words to action" in the comments. This awareness marks the beginning of redirecting your energy from describing problems to actually solving them. Florence Scovel Shinn often posed a penetrating question that cuts straight to the heart of this seventh wealth-destroying habit. Have you ever seen someone complain their way into success? Take a moment to truly consider this. Throughout human history, across every field of endeavor, has a single person ever achieved financial independence, created a thriving business, or built lasting wealth primarily through the act of complaining? The answer reveals a fundamental truth about success. Complaining produces nothing, while action creates results. The psychology behind this pattern is particularly fascinating. Complaining creates what Scovel Shinn called a counterfeit catharsis. The temporary emotional relief you experience when venting frustrations feels deceptively similar to the satisfaction of actually solving problems. This creates a dangerous substitution where expressing grievances becomes a replacement for taking constructive steps. Behind the scenes, this substitution operates through a psychological mechanism called negative reinforcement. The momentary relief experienced after complaining actually strengthens the complaining behavior, creating a self-perpetuating cycle that diverts energy away from productive action. The mathematical reality is simple yet profound. Every minute devoted to describing what's wrong is a minute not invested in creating what's right. This time allocation, compounded over months and years, creates dramatically divergent paths between those who channel their dissatisfaction into catalysts for change and those who convert it into elaborate justifications for inaction. The revelation here isn't that complaining is inherently wrong. It's that it creates an illusion of movement while actually cementing you more firmly in place. What makes this habit particularly insidious is the invisible barrier it creates between you and financial growth. Florence Scovel Shinn used a powerful metaphor to describe this phenomenon. Complaining places chains on your potential, chains you believe the world placed on you, but that you actually placed on yourself. The profound insight in this imagery is that these limitations aren't external impositions, but self-created boundaries. Every complaint reinforces the mental model that your circumstances control you rather than you controlling your response to circumstances. The journey toward financial freedom requires transforming this fundamental orientation, moving from describing problems to designing solutions. This doesn't mean adopting toxic positivity or denying legitimate challenges. It means developing what psychologists now call an internal locus of control, the belief that while you can't control all external events, you always control your response to them. This mindset shift creates a profound reframing of obstacles from permanent barriers to temporary challenges awaiting creative solutions. This perspective completely inverts how we approach financial difficulties. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a question that inevitably leads to complaint, We begin asking, "What can I do about this?" A question that naturally generates action. This simple shift in questioning transforms your relationship with adversity itself, converting obstacles from sources of frustration into catalysts for growth and innovation. If you've recognized this pattern of substituting complaints for action in your own approach to financial challenges, type "solutions, not complaints" in the comments. This awareness marks the beginning of redirecting your mental and emotional energy from describing the world as it is to creating the world as you want it to be. Now, I want to reveal perhaps the most profound insight from Florence Scovel Shinn's research, the moment when real transformation begins in anyone's financial journey. This pivotal shift happens at a precise psychological inflection point, when you stop saying, "It's not my fault," and start saying, "It's my responsibility." This seemingly small change in language represents a monumental transformation in your relationship with money and possibility. This shift is the invisible catalyst behind every financial breakthrough. It marks the transition from victim to creator, from passive recipient of circumstances to active architect of your destiny. The language we use isn't merely descriptive, it's actually creative, forming the mental frameworks through which we interpret and respond to the world. When you declare something not your fault, you simultaneously declare it not your power to change. When you claim something as your responsibility, you reclaim the authority to transform it. The revelation here is that financial freedom doesn't begin with external changes in your circumstances. It begins with this internal revolution in how you relate to those circumstances. Behind the scenes of every rags to riches story, every entrepreneurial breakthrough, every investment success, you'll find this fundamental reorientation from blame to ownership. This shift doesn't ignore real challenges or systemic obstacles. It simply refuses to grant them authority over your future. What makes this perspective so powerful is that it completely inverts the traditional approach to financial improvement. Most people believe they need external conditions to change before they can experience internal transformation. More money, better opportunities, different circumstances. But those who actually achieve financial independence discover the opposite truth. Internal transformation must precede external change. The journey toward wealth begins not when your situation improves, but when you take full ownership of your response to whatever situation currently exists. This brings us to the most profound discovery from Florence Scovel Shinn's decades of research into financial psychology. Poverty isn't primarily about money. It's a mindset. This explains the puzzling observation that two people with identical resources, opportunities, and starting points can experience dramatically different financial outcomes. One remains trapped in perpetual struggle while the other builds lasting prosperity, not because of external advantages, but because of fundamentally different internal operating systems. The blueprint of these operating systems is formed by your daily habits. The 7 patterns we've explored become either the architecture of limitation or the foundation of abundance. This perspective is simultaneously challenging and empowering. It's challenging because it places responsibility squarely on your shoulders rather than on external circumstances. It's empowering because it locates the power to change precisely where you have maximum control, in your daily choices rather than in the world around you. If you're recognizing how these 7 wealth-destroying habits might be operating in your own financial life, type "mindset matters most" in the comments. This acknowledgement represents the beginning of a profound journey, one that transforms not just your bank account, but your entire relationship with possibility itself. Florence Scovel Shinn frequently shared a truth that many find uncomfortable but ultimately liberating. Nobody is born poor forever. You may be born with nothing, but if you die with nothing, it is because you chose the wrong habits. This statement strikes at the very core of how we understand financial destiny. It removes the concept of permanent victimhood and replaces it with the profound power of choice. This isn't about ignoring genuine disadvantages or systemic challenges. It's about recognizing that regardless of starting point, your financial destination is determined primarily by the habits you embrace or reject along the journey. This perspective completely transforms how we understand success and struggle. Life doesn't reward excuses, complaints, or even good intentions. It rewards specific behaviors, discipline, courage, and consistent action. The most uncomfortable revelation here is that many people spend decades developing elaborate explanations for why financial success was impossible for them, investing more energy in justifying their position than in attempting to change it. The tragedy isn't in starting with nothing. It's in allowing self-limiting habits to ensure you finish with nothing as well. Behind the scenes of every financial choice lies what Shinn called the deceptive insignificance of daily decisions. Each individual choice, whether to save or spend, learn or distract, act or complain, seems so small in the moment that we rarely connect it to our long-term outcomes. This creates a dangerous illusion where transformative decisions feel insignificant at the time they're made. 10 years from now, looking back on your financial journey, you'll likely regret just two things: the chances you didn't take and the habits you didn't change. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this phenomenon in a powerful metaphor. Habits are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. When you first adopt a financial pattern, whether productive or destructive, it feels almost weightless, like a single thread that could be broken with minimal effort. But as these patterns repeat day after day, the threads intertwine and strengthen, eventually forming chains that require enormous effort to break. Most people don't recognize the weight of their financial habits until they've already become binding. This insight illuminates why habit transformation is so challenging, yet so essential. The seemingly minor daily choices, choosing a $5 coffee over investing the same amount, spending an evening on entertainment rather than education, complaining about circumstances instead of creating solutions, appear inconsequential in isolation. Yet these micro-decisions, accumulated over decades, ultimately determine your financial destiny. By the time most people recognize the impact of these patterns, they've already shaped entire lives. The awakening begins when you realize that financial freedom isn't created through dramatic, one-time decisions, but through the consistent application of empowering habits that replace limiting ones. This journey isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Each time you catch yourself falling into one of the 7 wealth-destroying habits we've explored and choose differently, you're altering your financial trajectory. These course corrections, though they may seem minor in the moment, create exponential differences in destination over time. If you're seeing how these invisible patterns have been shaping your financial reality, type "choosing new patterns" in the comments. Your awareness of these habits is the first crucial step in breaking free from their influence and creating a new financial future. Now I want to share what Florence Scovel Shinn considered the most empowering revelation from her decades of research. The understanding that today, this very moment, offers you a choice that can completely transform your financial trajectory. This isn't about waiting for the right conditions or for external circumstances to align. It's about recognizing that poverty isn't your destiny. It's simply a temporary situation if you choose to fight it. This perspective completely reframes your relationship with financial struggle, seeing it not as a permanent identity, but as a temporary circumstance that can be overcome through deliberate action. The hidden truth that most people miss is that every wealthy person you admire today, every successful entrepreneur, investor, or business leader, once stood exactly where you might be standing now, unknown, struggling, and doubted. They faced rejection, experienced failure, and encountered all the same obstacles that might currently seem insurmountable in your own journey. What ultimately separated them wasn't superior intelligence, extraordinary luck, or special connections, though these factors might have played supporting roles. The primary differentiator was their decision to systematically change their habits. Behind the scenes of every success story lies this fundamental revelation. Financial transformation begins with habit transformation. Those who break free from struggle don't discover some magical shortcut unavailable to others. They simply make a series of deliberate choices to replace limiting patterns with empowering ones. They choose investment over consumption, growth over comfort, action over complaint, and responsibility over blame. These decisions, while simple to understand, require tremendous courage and consistency to implement, which is precisely why they create exceptional results. This perspective offers both a challenge and an invitation. The challenge is accepting that your financial future will be determined primarily by your habits rather than by external circumstances. The invitation is recognizing that if others have transformed their financial reality through changing these patterns, you can do the same. The blueprint has been established. The path has been walked. The transformation is possible for anyone willing to embrace new habits with discipline and persistence. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this essential truth in a powerful statement that serves as both encouragement and warning. Success is not built in one day, but it is built daily. Your habits are your future. Change your habits and you will change your life. This insight completely transforms how we understand financial achievement. Your destiny isn't shaped by dramatic one-time decisions, but by thousands of small daily choices that compound over time. Choices that individually might seem insignificant, but collectively create the architecture of your financial life. These daily decisions, whether to consume or invest, complain or create, blame or take responsibility, might appear trivial in isolation. But over months and years, they form the invisible infrastructure that either supports prosperity or reinforces limitation. The profound question that remains is simple yet life-changing. Which habits will you take with you into tomorrow? If these insights have illuminated something important in your own financial journey, type "transforming my habits" in the comments below. As we reach this moment of awareness together, I hope these insights from Florence Scovel Shinn have illuminated something valuable about your own financial journey. The 7 habits we've explored aren't just abstract concepts, they're daily. Patterns operating in all our lives, either limiting our potential or expanding it. The beautiful truth is that recognizing these patterns is already the beginning of transforming them. I create these videos because I believe that financial freedom isn't just for a select few. It's available to anyone willing to examine their habits and make deliberate choices to change them. If you found value in these insights today, I'd love to have you join our community by subscribing to the channel. Each week, we explore these transformative principles that can help you break free from financial limitation and build the abundance you deserve. If this message resonated with you today, I'd be grateful if you'd leave a like on this video. It helps others discover these ideas who might be on similar journeys. And if you made it all the way through, type "breaking my chains" in the comments. I read every comment, and your stories of transformation inspire not just me, but everyone in this community. Your financial future isn't set in stone. It's being created one habit at a time, starting right now. The choice of which habits you'll carry forward belongs entirely to you. There's a video right here that builds on everything we've discussed today about developing wealth-building habits rather than wealth-destroying ones. Click and continue with me over there, and let's keep building your financial freedom together.